toilet cleaner can do his job 40 hours a week, go home, got nothing to worry about, no responsibility, can relax afterwards. If we were all on exactly the same salary, I would still rather have a demanding, challenging job. Inequality is inevitable in a capitalist society, and I would argue that until we have a more socialist society, we will never see equality. It's about cooperation rather than competition. And Georgina said that equality is a right. Absolutely it is. But it's one we have to fight for and struggle for, because it doesn't come easily.
Thank you for that, Pete. That's a very interesting standpoint, and we'll hope to have a fruitful discussion about that.
Thank you very much. I'm Norbert, KONGA, and standing here this night to say that I don't believe that equality exists. It's quite strong, but I know why. I can't recognize a beauty when I see one. The world today is so ugly because of inequality and all that is going on, unfairness and a lot of stuff that even push our young people today to say that life itself is not fair. So equality should exist, but I'm sorry, what we are living in our actual world is the opposite, the symmetric opposite of equality, which is inequality. So I can't even define equality. I describe and define inequality because this is what is reality in our society today. And the decline in our society today is not a strange thing. We all know it. For me, it is intrinsic in capitalism, as some of us have already said it here. People making profit, competition, globalization, and all these things, they do not encourage the values that we do possess in society. My colleague just said it, pointed it, that it is a right actually in the international covenant on social, cultural, and economical rights. We see equality there, though that we do not, governments do not push much what is social, economical, and cultural. The most of the time basing their efforts on the civil and political rights, where we have the right to the freedom of speech and this and that, political things. But it is a right. It is something that we should have, but I'm sorry, for me, it doesn't exist, because all we know is inequality. And that article of equality in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights says that we are all, the first article of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights states that we are all born equal. We are all born free and equal in dignity and the rest. We are all born. We from the Homo sapiens being. We are all intelligent agents, tending, yes, to be politicians, yes, sometimes without knowing it, because everything is framed today on politics. People can sometimes be good, but when you have bad democracy or bad politics, then they become evil. So the state of nature for me today is the state where we have everyone fighting against everyone. You want to gain life, we fight over the scarcity of the material or the resources or the goods that we have. But we are supposed to live, in order to have equality, we need some justice. We're supposed to live in a way, where we consider the value of others or other people. But each life has a value. So in a society, we are supposed to support and to encourage that, and to have a certain kind of, as Pete just said it, cooperation instead of competition. So until we reframe our minds and consider the values each of us have, we cannot have equality, because equality supports equity. Equity is justice. We can't, because we don't have equity, we don't have justice, we never have equality. We can't have it in this actual world. And as I said, it is intrinsic to the capitalism. And whatsoever the world can sing and say today, when, for example, in 1918, when they brought the globalization, saying that it's to increase the interconnectivity and the free market, is the world really free? They're making a free market, but it is not free. We are not free, actually. Because all is about who will govern who will rule who will win, who gain what, when, and where, how. Everything is politics. So as long as we have bad politics, we will not have equality. It is true that we can't put all that in government, a way of going on to carrying or rolling people or doing things. It's also about the society, ourselves. But I think it is time that we do something about it. It's our government. The first responsibility goes to our government to work on that subject, to provide, to protect, to prevent, and protect the rights of the people, of disabled people, people of colors, and this and that. Because we can't be discriminated on the ground of our colors and race and sexual orientation and this and that. So the first responsibility goes to the government, who must make sure that we protect that through our social contract. You know what I mean by social contract? As I said, the state of the nature is the fight of everyone against everyone. When we talk, we see the private property, where whosoever has something bigger than or the other, we think is stronger than the other, we start maltreating, isn't it? Oppressing his brother or fellow human being.
Norbert, I'm going to push you for that.
Thank you very much. This is just the beginning, so I don't believe in equality. But we still have a lot to say.
Watch your space. Thank you very
I don't
much.
believe in equality because there is no equity, no justice around the world. So I talk globally on the global social justice.
Thank you, Norbert, for that. Ian,
Oh, is that?
Does this work?
People here? Yeah.
great, thank you.
Lovely. Right. Right. I'm Ian Cockerill, and how do I follow that? Both
Just
speakers.
losing your tone.
Well, quite interestingly, because I'm not as well organised as other people, if I was sent an email, I haven't read it. So what you get is what I think and what I believe. And in terms of the question, equality, myth or truth, then I can say quite categorically I'm coming down on the myth side. Although I recognise some of the things that some of the positive people have said as being true too, I still think that it's a myth. And why do I think that? I guess if somebody was to ask me that question when I was a small child, when I was in primary school, I would have said it was truth. Because I was taught in the country that I lived in, which was Britain, that this was a fantastic country that was just and fair and provided for everybody. And luckily, I also lived in a country that provided me an opportunity for an education. And as I began to learn about what the world was like, both the country that I was in and the rest of the world that we're part of, I discovered the hypocrisy of those values and those myths. Because what you've just talked about, what Peter just talked about, is absolutely true. There is stark inequality in the world that we live within. And there's stark inequality in Britain. And that, discovering that hypocrisy has really driven me all my working life in terms of what I do. Because it's about trying to tackle that inequality. And it's hard, really hard work. Because those who are less equal than others have the hardest lives. And that seems bizarre if we live in a society that's said to care. But that's what happens. And it's hard to ignore the fact that part of the reason for that inequality is the economic system we live within. It does mean that wealth is created in the hands of few and not the many. And that appears to be getting worse. In my lifetime, since markets have been freed and there's been stronger capitalism operating in the world market, wealth is concentrated in fewer people, not more. The trickle-down effect is not happening. It is not improving the lot of everybody. Some people are doing very well out of it. And that's one of the paradoxes of living in Britain. Because, as mentioned at the start, there is a legal framework in Britain that establishes quite clearly, in the legal sense, equalities and rights for individuals. But we can also see in practice that that doesn't translate into how people live. Because some people are less able than others to make use of the opportunities that framework creates. And if we take that outside of Britain, we can see that happening even more where there's less opportunity in other countries. And that discrimination, that exclusion starts really with children for me. I think about life as a start and an end. We're all born, as has been said, and we're all going to die. And it's what that journey's like along the way that really matters. But if you're a child that we're said to care for so much, that happens to live in a dysfunctional family, or a family that's struggling because of illness or disability, you're less likely to make use of the things that are around you. You're less likely to succeed. You're less likely to do well at school. You're less likely to become economically independent. And if we lived in a society that cared about equality, we do something about that, but we don't. We actually reinforce it. And even in a developed country like this one, children in care have lower life chances. Care is a word that does not apply to children looked after by the state. So we see stark inequality all around us in practice, despite a legal framework and some propaganda, I would call it, to the contrary. And I think we see that discrimination happen so much throughout that whole lifespan, based on all sorts of reasons, not just about children, but it can be about ethnicity, it can be about accent, it can be about sexuality, it can be about a whole host of things. And there is a vacuum in the leadership of our society to address that. What we still see today, unfortunately, is the kind of mythology enthused about things like immigration, about trying to create division between people in our society, when what we should be doing, and what our leaders should be doing, is championing the fact that equality is what we live for, and tackling disadvantage is why we make money, not the other way around. So I very much sit on the it's a myth, but there is a lot we could do about it if our leaders showed a willingness and a way to do so. And those who have wealth, and let's just think about what wealth is. Money doesn't exist. It's a philosophical concept. Wealth is power. And this comes back to your point. To get equality, you need equity in terms of power. We don't have that, and a vote doesn't give us it. So I'm on myth.
Thank you for that. Thank you very much for all the speakers. That's a really strong perspective on both sides. Like question time, we're going to actually open up to the floor now, and amongst yourselves really. So anyone from the audience is more than happy to ask any of the panel questions, or guest speakers any questions. Great, go for it.
Yeah, thank you. So, right, my name's Andy. So everyone actually pretty much said there isn't equality, didn't they? I know you said that there isn't, but we have to tell the kids there is. And you said there isn't, but we might get it. And you was, if I can push it together, said there isn't, but we possibly could if we change the system. It's very hard to disagree with anything anybody said, I think. But my main question is about human nature. Is there anything in human nature which necessarily enjoys or strives for a degree of inequality? Can politics, and if there is, can politics ever overcome that?
Okay, that's a really deep question to ask. Any of the panel guests would like to take that on? Yeah.
I will try. The human nature, we just talked about the state of the nature itself. I mentioned it, I said that we actually don't share the abundance of what we have in nature, the fruit of the earth, which belongs to all of us, and the earth itself to nobody. I like philosophers when they describe that. They say the fruit of the earth belongs to all of us, but the earth belongs to nobody. Now, we don't have that abundance to share like equally naturally. So we fight over the scarcity of what we have, the little that we have. People want to gain more, pass others, and when they have more, pass others, they try to impress themselves. it's Kant or Thomas Hobbes, a philosopher who said that, a political philosopher who said that. And people, human beings have this tendency of maximizing their powers and acts. So it is natural. And because of the fight, that's why we say that the state has a big responsibility in that. Because of the fight between us, because of the scarcity of what we have and the power we want to hold, we want to hold over others and this and that, we have to sign a social contract, which is a sovereignty. Sure. We have a sovereign. We have an artificial soul, which is sovereign, which is the state or government. And we hand all our powers. We want to cease fire between us, the fight. So we hand all that to the sovereign. That the sovereign should help us to protect our rights, not to be discriminated against and this and that. So, as I said, if the government or the politics, if the government can't, if they fail in providing that the protection that we need, then we go back to the state of nature, which is the fight of everyone against everyone. I don't know if I'm giving.
No, I understand it completely. I don't disagree, but my question is then is the same question worded in a different way. Is that how can you ever overcome the selfishness of humans?
Yeah, Ian. Sorry, we'll take Ian and then we'll take Jan.
I think it's an interesting point because although I don't disagree with what you've said per se, I would to some extent. You know, I think as a species, humans are incredibly good at cooperation, and we're successful because we cooperate. If you look at the historical record, it's social structures that look after the ill, look after the elderly, work together that succeed. And I think that, to me, is the default position for the vast majority of human beings. I think for people who travel the world, you'll experience that, because you can come across stark material poverty in parts of the world, but massive humanity and a willingness to want to speak with and engage with other people. And it's not all fighting for resources. Clearly, if you're starving, you're going to fight. But I think where people aren't, the default position is cooperation to get along. But I think there is an issue about, there is a small section of the population across all of human beings that have, for want of a better term, because this is how the academics describe it, as I understand it, psychopathic tendencies. They have less empathy, they have less conscience, they have less understanding of the impact of their behaviour on others around them. And it does appear to me, in my experience, that they're the people that tend to get concentrated in positions of power. And that's why there is a need, as you mentioned specifically, for a state and a framework to try and regulate that. And the most obvious way to do it is through things like that we no longer talk about because we say they're not relevant. But it is things about tax, and it is about how you redistribute power and wealth. And it is about how you put that framework in place to ensure that power isn't concentrated in too few people because they can't help themselves, is the bottom line. Because they're told, what I'm doing is successful. What I'm doing is the right thing to do. Getting more is brilliant. And yet the majority of us think, no, it isn't. It's actually really bad. Because there is enough in the world to meet people's needs, despite the growing population. And it is a travesty that with all the intelligence and all the technology and all of the things around us, that we still can't see that. We still go down the route of what you describe at that strategic level. We'll have to get resources, we'll have to capture, we'll have to make sure it's our sphere of influence. And we need to change that tack and think about how we liberate people so that they're not starving and not fighting and not looking for justice. And then we'll all be better off.
One of the things that I'm confused about here is, are we looking at global equality or are we looking at equality in the UK? And that's not clear. And I think we're all talking from different perspectives, and I think the arguments then are very different. One thing that struck me, both with Ian and Norbert, is one referred to our leaders, and another one referred to it's the state's responsibility. And what I would say to people is I agree, we are all born equal, and when were those rights taken away from you? Because I don't feel mine have been, because I've assumed the moral authority to make a difference, and nobody can take that away from me. It's not about position, it's not about job role, it's not about anything. It's about standing up and making a difference. And if you're strong and you're prepared to fight for what you want, and it's like I said earlier, equality is a possibility, but everybody has to take responsibility for it and stop waiting for everybody else to do it for them.
Thanks for that. Do you want to
Just again to add on the point that you said, it's very similar to what I was going to say. Funny. It does come down to us being autonomous and just standing out and opening our mouths and using our voices for what we believe in. There was a time, I don't know if some people still have them in their workplaces, but in the toilets, on the mirrors, they put these stickers up. It'll go, who's the person in your organisation responsible for health and safety? Then underneath it will say, you're looking at them, and I say, you're looking in the mirror. But you know, it's applicable to so many things. Like, who's responsible for equality in our communities? Is it our local MP? Is it no, it's every single one of us. We more and more have to take responsibility for these things. We can't look to other people to provide it for us. Of course, we don't live in a perfect country. We don't. Our schools aren't perfect. You know, our public services aren't perfect. Our neighbourhoods aren't perfect. However, they never will be if all we do is argue and look to others to make them perfect. There's always going to be issues that we are going to have to overcome. However, we are all equipped with things to address those. We are. And you don't believe that we are equipped with them? No. Okay, what would you like?
That's fine. I mean, what I'll do, I'll open to Pete shortly. We'll take the gentleman in the pink shirt. Oh, go on, you go. Go for it.
No, you're right. You go on. Take the question.
Oh, sorry. If you go with your question.
Well, there's loads of things I could say. I mean, I'm going to start with, at the very beginning we talked about lying to young people and not telling young people what the world's really like out there. No. Would you? No, let me finish. I didn't interrupt you. Would you say to your young children, it's very safe to run across a very busy road. It's really okay to put your hands in the fire. We need to be honest with our young people, tell them what the world's really about. I'll bring it down to Middlesbrough. You were talking about global, and other people talking about UK. I'll talk about Middlesbrough. There's modern day slavery going on in Middlesbrough now. Those people who were oppressed, who were starving, who got people feet on their heads, they've got no voice. They've got nobody standing up for them, telling them how to do things, and they can't stand up and say, I'm being oppressed, I deserve to be equal. In the real world, what's gone wrong here is we have 1% of the population that owns 85% of the wealth. We have, and you know, systems are created so that poverty is perpetuated because it keeps other people in a job. That's what's wrong with our society, and that's what's wrong in Middlesbrough now. We have 5 or 6 people who tell this whole town what's good for it, and most of them don't live here. You know, a friend of mine couldn't get here tonight because Martin Road was gridlocked and she couldn't get out of the hospital car park, and that's what happens. Small things like that happen when people who have no vested interest in society, in the sense of a very local society, and what goes on. So to say that, we can all do it, you know, we just have to be autonomous, to stick our hands up and let our voices be heard. Not everybody has a voice. There are lots of people in Middlesbrough, in the country and in the wider world who are hugely oppressed by those that have. And as long as we allow that to continue, it will always be the same.
But we do.
But the thing is, I'm not... Firstly, I didn't say anything about lying to children.
Yeah, you did.
But no, I didn't. I said that we
so you children, you tell your children there's equality out there and it isn't.
No, you want, so you would much rather that I sat down with children in schools and said that equality is an absolute myth. It doesn't exist. It's not something that we should strive for, and you know, just don't worry about it because it never ever will happen. So don't even try to address it. I don't know.
Wait a minute, I never said none of that either. No, just don't lie to the kid.
Okay, well let's just remove the word lying. I'm just okay. You can keep it. I won't. But what I will say about that is I think that we do all have a responsibility to address this. Of course, there are people oppressed, and there are people going to the trafficking issue. I said last week, this week has been. Addressing anti-slavery, and for example, you know, we don't need to talk about religion, but our church did a huge, massive drive in raising awareness and funds to addressing that absolute issue. It's a massive issue, and it shouldn't go overlooked. and it shouldn't be something that's hushed away in a corner and isn't open. There is a lot of people doing a lot towards raising awareness and trying to rid our communities of that. Of course there are people oppressed. I'm not saying that we should overlook that or say it doesn't exist. What I am saying is that we all have a responsibility to do something about it, and we can. We may never ever see eye to eye on this, and that's together fine.
Well, because you're saying it's the victim's fault.
I'm not saying it's the victim's fault. I'm saying it's our responsibility, all of us in here, to open our mouths and champion equality and get rights for these people and remove that oppression and stand up for them if they cannot. I'm saying we can't just sit there and go, well, that's inequality. Well, you know, that's just the way the world goes and that's just it, and forget about it. No, we can't. If we have a voice, we use it and make the world equal. That's my viewpoint.
Thank you.
Well, human nature, nothing's black and white. I know I made it sound like when I first started, but it isn't. Yeah, if I'm walking through town and somebody walks in front of me or doesn't indicate which way they're going to go, I don't worry about it, you know, and I open the door for people, and you know, I'm very relaxing. I get in my car on my motorbike. I want to beat everybody. So how much is human nature is difficult to say. But I really do think that ancient civilizations, you know, for instance, I dug a pond in North York Moors, and I found a flint arrowhead, exquisitely made. It's really difficult for anybody in society now to make one of these. My partner found it, actually. I dug it up, she found it. So she might have been the first person to touch that in 5,000 years. It's from Stone Age times. And if you look at trade across the world, you know, thousands of years ago, people were trading. You know, we've got stuff here that's thousands of years old that came from Africa, that came from the Far East. It's just incredible. And I think people in those days were mostly cooperative and traded fairly, and I think it's pretty fair. I think it all went wrong maybe 2,000 years ago. Everybody started fighting each other and things. But I think now, society now, we're much more, I think, aware of things, environmentally and things. And I just feel that we're at a stage now where we should be behaving a lot better than we do. And we shouldn't be oppressing people. You're absolutely right in all the things you were saying. It is appalling the way people treat other people from other societies and things. And we've just, you know, I'm a very strong advocate of no borders. I think borders cause all the problems, really. And we all need to cooperate. The Beatles had a song called "All You Need Is Love," and I think that's it.
We're going to go for one question at the back. I think Liv's been waiting for a while.
First, I wanted to say, yes, my kids always say, "Mom, it's not fair," and I say, "Of course it's not fair. You should make it fair." Therefore, for kids, it's really important what you tell them and what you want them to, react. Therefore, of course, it's not fair. It's our responsibility to make it fair. And I just want to talk about little word of equality, not about global, UK, anything else. It's just about equality. Do you think if we live in a dark room, can we just ignore sun and we say sun, it's a myth? Can we do that? Can we blame sun for global warming? If we make problem, we can't say there is not equality. Equality is a myth. No, equality is a beautiful side of human nature. We just make it, but we just spoil it, ignore it, destroy it. Therefore, we can't say it's a myth. No, equality is the truth. Sorry, thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, Norbert, and then...
Yeah, well, just right from the beginning, I said that it is a myth because we are supposed to experience equality. We're supposed to see it.
No,
a myth is just kind of a story that you were told of and you grew up believing it exists. But actually, it is not a reality. I mean, the reality, what the world is living today, I just said, the world in which we live today, I mean, in this world, we don't experience the equality anymore. That's why I say it is a myth. I don't say it doesn't exist somewhere. But in this our world, as you said, in a dark room, there's no light there. But if you believe there's light somewhere, I don't argue with you. I'm saying we are not experiencing it. And to say, Pete, you just said that we are not fighting anymore. The fight today is not physical. You say in the ancient world, it was physically, the fight of one against another, and this and that. It is not physical. People play with intelligence, as I just said. They bought globalization. They say, for example, it is to increase the interconnectivity. Because if one region is developed or has a wealth, and then it can influence other regions of the world, that we can all share the wealth. But is it the case? It is not. We are not free. They say free market, but are you free? Are we all free to do what? Are we all having access to international market and this and that? So it's people are just playing. It is not physically. I'm not saying we still fight physically like the fight against one another, no, proper people. But it is intelligent. We say economical, but it's not only economical, but the system that has been put in place is putting people like developing countries in a position they have less control over what is going on. They put a system and then you can't even have control over it. This is just some group of people with their hegemony or oligarchy way of system of leading this world want to gain more than others, and this it's not physical fight. So my sister is a myth because we don't have it. We want to have it. We want to make it a reality. That's what I said. That's why we say it is a myth. That's why we are fighting, trying our best to make it happen.
Ian, and then we'll open up again for questions.
Thank you. There's a couple of observations really on a few things that are said. Starting with the local or global. Well, to me, you can't divorce the two. You know, prosperity in Britain is based on a global economy. You know, if you wanted to dissect it historically, we're rich and powerful because we exploited people through a colonial system. And people who live in former colonies are quite well aware of that because we've left them to it. And we live a very different quality of life to people we left behind. You know, and there's plenty of examples of that. So we can't ignore the past and the history of how we got to where we are and how we created the capital that makes the country work in the first place. There's a historical precedent for that. But I think that the second thing, which is more important, which is what you related to, really, is although I might talk about the need for a state framework, it's not the responsibility of the state. We have to consent to it as people. But there's a need for it because there's the micro and there's the macro. So you need a state to deal with the big and the powerful because individuals can't. But actually the most powerful thing, in my view, is how individuals behave. And we shouldn't lose sight of the fact it's one of the joys of being a human being that the vast majority of us are cooperative and do actually make great use of that social interaction with each other. And it is a beautiful thing, and it is a joy. You know, and it's why we can like songs by the Beatles or anybody else that talks about it, because it's actually really meaningful for a lot of us. And as individuals, we can make use of that. And I guess, you know, some of the challenge to me around our leaders, and when I mean leaders, it's people who have power. You know, they're not necessarily appointed, they're people with power. They should try that now and again, being nice to people, doing something for nothing. It's a wonderful, liberating thing. And there are plenty of examples in this country and elsewhere in the world where people maintain equitable relationships, where equality isn't a myth, with vast differences in material wealth. Because it's how you behave that makes a difference. And I think from an individual point of view, that's something that's within us all. And we can do that, even if we can't change the world.
Thank you. Thanks for that, Ian.
Yeah. I think from a number of things again, and it's talking about leadership and leadership being associated with power. Well, Gandhi didn't have money or power, but he influenced a nation and global. He had his moral authority to speak out and do something, and he stood by himself. But then the masses joined him, and where things are always associated with money and power, I think the masses need to realise actually they're the ones with the power, because if you mass against the people with the power, they're going to fall and crumble. And I think that's what society needs to know. But I think another interesting observation that I'm seeing is the difference between the women and the men and their views on equality. So when you're thinking about values, core values within individuals, is it an issue of nature or nurture? Because what I'm seeing here is women nurturing equality within children, and that is the next generation coming forward. So is that a different angle to look at, is equality real and can it be made real? Because there are women in this room who think it can, and men who are clearly stating that it can't.
Right. Thank you for that, John.
Norbert, do you want to just one more? Just one minute to the Georgina.
Georgina.
Oh, yeah.
Georgina. You keep saying that if we have to fight for ourselves, to stand and to claim our rights and things like that. In today's world, I just wanted to tell you something that maybe what you experience in this country is quite different from what other people.
This is why we need to clarify
yes.
whether we're talking about
but
global
yes,
or
but equality is equality. Whether it is global or local, it is equality. So I want to say that anything that makes you different from others makes you a dangerous person in our world, where I come from, for example. Anything that makes you stand out of the crowd makes you dangerous, and you become an opponent to the regime or the powers that are in the world today. So it is not easy for you to just stand. Many are having a lot to say. Many want to stand and talk, but they don't have voices. There's no voice. They don't have the power to stand and talk. I did IT before. In order to stand to sit with you today and be able to talk about my rights or equality, I took more than 8 years or 7 years and a half to study law to be able to know what are my rights and responsibilities. So is everybody patient enough to do that? You take a very long journey just because you want to achieve something in life, to contribute to what my country is going through. I'm from Congo, actually. And we are fighting to install the international tribunal to bring to justice those who violated our rights in the country by killing and raping and this and that. So I have to fight for 8 years, be patient enough to have a voice today. Today I can talk from here. If I don't know anything about my rights, if I was just sitting there being an IT technician, and in my life than anybody else, will I be able to sit here with you and discuss? So standing and talking, you mentioned Gandhi. Gandhi made it. He was supported, yes. Gandhi made it, Nelson Mandela made it. And he was there saying, I'm not against the white people. I'm against the fact that the whites are having primacy or supremacy over us. I'm not against a white man, but I'm against the system that is put in place. So to stand and talk requires a lot of sacrifices, and not everybody is ready to do that. So the few that are able to do that, the few that have had the grace, let me say, to stand out of the crowd and to say it, they become automatically dangerous to the eyes of others. As even I'm sitting here, I don't know if you're on YouTube or whatever, people will start seeing my image. I'm already a dangerous person because I'm just speaking out my voice.
Yeah, I accept that in an African country or where there are problems, but I'm talking about in the UK. And we're talking about
I'm talking about global justice.
Right.
Who's doing justice in Middlesbrough?
If you have one conversation, that would be great. So, sorry, Jan.
Georgina, it's about global justice.
All right, okay.
It's global. We will come back to you if you want later. Thank you.
Well, either way. If you want to respond back.
Fair points. Very, very fair points. I mean, you've chosen to address equality and inequality in your way, and that's very powerful. And your way has been for studying for a very long time and taking a very public platform and speaking about it. Like I said, I spent the summer in a village in South Africa, and there were a lot of people doing things to make things better and more equal for others, down to just carrying a neighbour's child to the clinic or going to fetch water. And that, I think, was them doing their part. And that isn't necessarily as prominent or as professional as you are doing it, but I still feel that it is still doing as just and as important a job in the grand scheme of things. So I think everyone has their own role to play, and that is your one. And you know, kudos for you for doing it, and it's important that you do it. But you know, it's not for everyone to be Mr. Konga. Is that your name?
Yeah,
right.
kids.
Okay. But you know, it's not for everyone to do what you're doing. Basically.
Thank you for that. That's a really interesting debate. Any more questions from the floor? Yeah, lady at the front.
So we're getting told that you have to be strong and then you have to speak up for yourself, and you know, equality is in you and you can get it out there. And then we're getting told, well, you can do it in like certain ways, like doing little things. But I don't think the little things that people do that they stand out as much as the big people that are out there that are oppressing. That's how I feel. And I'm only 22 years old, and I started experiencing inequality when I was in school. And my little sister now, she's 8 years old, and we've already had to change schools for her because she was the only black kid in the school. She could tell she was different, she was being treated differently. And I feel like it's teaching your children that it does exist, but this is what you can do about it, not completely just ignoring it and, you know, not telling them it exists, but you're strong, you can do this about it. And because my mum never spoke to her about it, and then it led to so many problems after that, whether she should have said to her, be strong, stand up for yourself and speak out. But she was like, oh, let's take her out of the school, put her somewhere else. And I just don't understand how. Do you speak up as a person, and do you say something, or do you not say anything and leave it? And
you always say something. I think. Do you mind if I respond? You always say something. And if your mum's here now, I would be saying she should say something, not just to teach your sister to say something, but at the time she should have taught you to say something. And I do think that the little things do matter, because actually, if in that classroom where you are experiencing problems or your sister is experiencing problems now, if every single parent from that class wrote a letter, believe the system in that classroom would have changed. If every single child stood up and said something in that classroom, something would have changed. And little things do matter. And I'm a teacher myself, and I know that things can go on in classrooms, and also how quickly they can be addressed. There's always very often deep and underlying issues for why they do present in the classroom. But moving schools doesn't address those. And you know, your sister has a voice. How old is she? 8?
she's 8.
Yeah, and I'm sure you know at home she can talk. I'm pretty sure she has a voice, and you teach her, and you continue to teach her how to channel that voice. And it will become more and more important the older she gets, because right now it might be about someone picking on her at school. In 5 years' time, it might be about something else. And it, you know, it's something that we need to encourage our children to do. It's something we need to foster in them, and our girls and our boys. We need to get them used to standing up for what is right, and being comfortable to say, actually, no, I think this is wrong, and knowing that they are valued enough to have their voice heard. And in the very safe communities that schools are, hopefully, the majority of the time, that would be the case. I would have to say.
Thank you for that. I think the gentleman.
We do agree. Lots of things you said I agree with. There are some examples I would give that kind of, for me, kind of lock in why equality is a myth, and why in the current society I don't see any hope that will change. And I hate to say that. You know, I'm a local politician myself, and it's partly my attitude. We're all corporate parents. And that, you know. As a young child, I was bullied because I was in a wheelchair, paraplegic, spent 5 years in a wheelchair, and I believed that I was in that wheelchair because I was being punished for things I'd done when I was younger, because that's what some of the old kids told me. And I firmly believed that, and eventually it got better than I. And then we move into now, in 2014, I'm just 3 miles from here, a Vietnamese guy been kept locked in a house for 2 years, growing skunk, and was smuggled into the country because he thought he got a better life, and he was battered against his life more than times like that, I remember. And when he was asked how that had happened, he said he deserved it because he'd sneaked out his own country and come here, and he didn't deserve any kind of here. Those are what kind of real examples of it.
Banguna na yo pona Yesu bakoki mesiko oyo zali bakoloba ya mosi tokanga kieti moto tolobaki akobonga lisusu te yo nani salelanga bikamwe, salelanga bikamwe, salelanga bikamwe, salelanga bikamwe, Yawe salelanga bikamwe, Yawe salelanga bikamwe, salelanga bikamwe, salelanga bikamwe, ngaba bingi bingi ngamingi zambe, salelanga bikamwe, salelanga bikamwe, salelanga bikamwe, nalia kina bango, namela kina bango, baba baba kelinga maladio, Yesu baba kelinga bobola, malesinga nde poise, malingi ngala kupa, Yawe salelanga bikamwe, Yesu neli bikamwe. Yesu babwa kelinga bobola, malesinga nde poise, malingi ngana kupa, salelanga bikamwe, nokina kokupanga yo, salelanga bikamwe Yawe, salelanga bikamwe, Yesu yo, Yesu yo, nokina kosambwa tambe, salelanga bikamwe, salelanga bikamwe, Yesu yo, salelanga bikamwe, Yesu babwa kelinga bobola, malesinga nde poise, malingi ngana kupa, nalia kina bangune, namela kina bangwe, baba babwa kelinga maladio, Yesu babwa kelinga bobola, malesinga nde poise, malingi ngana kupa, Yawe, Yesu libikamwe. Samwe panzana partout. Ndeko yo petongo mosusu ozoleka na nzela ongala lekaka. Nzamba lobaki na ngai ndenge kaka sango ane panzani ndenge pe akotombola ngai. Yesu yo. Ata bino moko na kokime wapi. Kasi na bangonga nango ya mpasi ya suka. Nayebisaka Nzambe na oselo lisu te. Nalembi na ngai. Na miso ebibi, mongongo ekauki, mpongi ezwinga na lali. Kasi tango nalamukaka, apesinga manzaka ya sika lokola ya aigle. Apesinga miso ya sika ya aigle amonaka mosika. Azongisi makasi na ngai, apesinga mapapu ya kokubwa. Azongisi monoko na ngai lokola ya aigle. Mpe nabandi koyembela ye, nabandi kokumisa ye. Osa malamu. Nango bata mokili baloba kangala suke. Mama sani nzamba monanga ye. Nga Marie. Nakoti 3 mois ya jeune. Nabakisi 3 semaines ya jeune. na mabele nalamuki nakoki olala te nasimbi mire nakoki osimba mire te natelemi nakoki otelema te nabaluki na mabele mamiso ebimi mongongo ekawuki nabandi oyembe